Hello and welcome back to Data Simplified, and today I have an Excel competency-based interview questions video for you. I'll link in the description below my previous interview questions video in Excel. However, this was more how to do specific formulas in Excel relating to growth and share for marketing roles, finance roles, business roles, all those kinds of roles. Whereas this video today is more on how to show you can actually use Excel in a competency-based interview. These tests are often used in entry-level roles, graduate roles, for supply chain roles, demand planning roles, business entry roles, anything like that really, even analytics roles. Just to generally get a gauge on how well the person can use Excel, what skills there are that are needing to be developed, and just in generally how they interpret data and how they would go about completing very simple tasks. I have both sat these tests and administered these tests, so on the basis of all of my years' knowledge and everything that I've gone through, I've put together today a test that I think is pretty typical as to what you would normally see, and I'll give you tips and tricks along the way on both marking and answering. So to start off with then, you normally have a few tabs. You'll typically have an instructions tab, an answer or questions tab, data tabs. You can have anything between 1 and 5 of these, all called varying things, dependent on what role exactly this is for. I've tried to make this as generic and generally applicable as possible. So let's start off with the instructions tab then. Now, the instructions tab itself is actually a test, and most candidates don't realise this. This is an attention to detail test, as normally in the instructions tab, there'll be a few specific instructions that you must adhere to in order to pass. For example, answering to 1 decimal place, completing questions in certain boxes. And the reason this attention to detail test is given is so that we can gauge a candidate's ability of attention to detail, because I don't want somebody looking at figures and doing figures in a business under myself if they can't even follow a simple written instruction in a test when they're trying for the job. So it's important to bear that in mind and to really read these carefully. Many candidates normally just gloss over them and then lose marks because they've answered to 1 decimal place instead of 2. So I really do encourage you read the instructions and double check them again at the end. So first instruction, please answer all questions in the answers tab. This is typical. It will normally tell you where to answer, and also if you need to answer in a specific box or something, that will normally be mentioned at this point too. These tests are always timed. So for example, today's one, you'll have 30 minutes to complete these questions. You always get a time limit. Sometimes someone will sit there with you whilst you complete the test, other times they won't. And during COVID, I've administered these virtually before, and you normally send the spreadsheet over and get the candidate to send it back within 30 minutes or whatever time period is specified. Again, that depends on the complexity of the role, the complexity of the tests, and the skills that are being sought after. Next, it will normally have a breakdown of the tabs and just tell you a little bit about each tab and what it contains. So the data tab contains order number, value, customer age, quantity and category. Data 2 tab contains order number and customer phone number. And the reason that this is done is to 1, give you a feel for the information, and 2, so you can look early on and think, right, if I needed to link this data, what's my common link? So for example, in ours, order number would be the common link. Next, here's the instruction I said about the numbers, so please answer in whole numbers only. So that's how we now know we need to answer today. And then next, please display working out where you feel it is required. Please make sure the answers are provided after the questions within the answers tab. So I would always recommend displaying working out whenever it is allowed, as long as it does not get involved with your answers so that your answers can't clearly be seen. Purely because another reason we do these tests is because there might be somebody that gets very few answers right. However, they're trying, you can follow their thought pattern by going through their workings out, and you can see the gaps that are needed for knowledge improvement. Or they might have experience in a similar system, so that's why they might have gone about answering a particular problem the way that they have. And finally, there'll normally be a well wish. So for example, today's one says, good luck. So after this, I then like to have a little look through the tabs, see what's going on. This is a pivot table in this one. The data's there. I always like to scroll down to the bottom of the data just to see how many rows there are. Again, in these tests, for very basic roles, like administration roles, I've seen about 10 rows, whereas for other more complex roles, I've seen 500 odd rows. So today, just to give you a feel for things, I've chosen to use 70 odd rows in this example. And then I would just do the same for all of the data tabs. Finally, the answers or questions tab. This is the one you're going to want to be on because it's going to be where you're going to put your answers. So, first of all, I would read through all of the questions, and any that you're like, oh, I'm not sure on, I would highlight and leave to the end, because it's important to get as many of the ones that you do know done first and correctly, because obviously you can then get those marks in. And then at the end, when you're not sure, you know exactly how much time you've got to try the more complex problem that you're not too sure on, and you know what room you've got to put your working out in. And you don't want to come back to it later in case obviously you lose your train of thought. However, feel free to approach the questions as you would like. I'm purely trying to give you some advice. So question 1, how many orders are there that have a quantity of 5? So go back to the data sheet where we've got the quantity amount of the orders. So we know each row represents an order because order number is assigned to each row, and the quantities are here in column E. So I think a COUNTIF is the best way to go about this. So I'm going to type in COUNTIF, open brackets, select my range for the COUNTIF. Then it's a quantity of 5, so I'm going to use the criteria of 5, close bracket and hit enter, and I get 17. So I now know there are 17 orders with a quantity of 5. As today's video is mainly to show you competency-based Excel interview, I'm not really going to be talking about too in-depth as to how the formulas work. However, if you do look around my channel, there are videos on my channel for all of the formulas breaking down simply in today's video. Question 2. What is the order value for customer phone number 12345691? So I don't have customer phone numbers on data, they're in data 2. But as I said earlier, order number appears to be the common field in between the two tabs. So I want order value for a specific customer phone number, so I'm just going to bring order value into this tab. You could bring phone numbers into the other tab, completely up to you. This is just the way that I'm going to do it because this tab is a little bit less busy. So in order to do that, I'm just going to do a VLOOKUP. In the other tab. And then we want 4 for column D. There we go. And then I'm just going to get the formula down. So we've got all of the order values. And then I'm just going to use the control find function to find the phone number. I think it's 5691. We'll check in a minute. So 23.7454. We know these are currency values and we have to answer in whole numbers. So it's going to be £24. We'll round up. So £24, perfect. And I'll just double check that number again. So it was 12345691. And the one we searched for was 12345691. Okay, I'm happy with that. I can move on. How much is the value of dress sales this year? So dress sales this year, let's have a little look. So again, there are a few different ways you're going to go about this. I'm going to use a pivot table because I just personally think they're really easy just to insert and to get quick information. So I want dress sales this year, so I'm going to want category in my rows, and then I'm going to want order value in my values. Make sure it's doing a sum and not a count of order values. I've got a video on the difference between sum and count. And then dress, I can see 659.1311,257. Obviously, we need to answer in whole numbers from our instructions, so I'll round that down to £659. And here, 659. And obviously, always make sure that you answer in currency if the answer's in currency, and that you answer in a number if it's in a number. Seem very basic things, but I've just had people answering straight numbers before, and it's just not very professional. And again, if they're not willing to put in that little bit of extra effort when they're trying for an interview, what could that say about them as an employee for the future? Next question. Why can you not count on age? So if we go to here, age. So if we just click on a few values, they look like whole numbers, so it looks like you're going to be able to do a count on it. Let's just scroll to the bottom and let's try and do a count if on age and see if it works. And we'll need to pick a specific age, so I can see 44 is at the bottom there, so we'll use 44. And 3. So yes, you can count on age, and that is not true. You might not have been able to count on age if these have been generated by a random number generator and contain decimal places. So for example, if 44 was 44.52918, the COUNTIF function would not have counted it, because COUNTIF looks for that number exactly that you put into it. So it will look for exactly 44, not, well, actually, if you rounded it, it'd be 44. But in this case, we can count, so that's fine. So you can count on age. So it might be a trick question put in to test your knowledge on how the COUNTIF function works, or to see if you're going to blindly follow the questions and agree with everything that they say. It could be a test of that. Because obviously in data it's important that you keep your integrity at all times. So this could be a simple integrity test to see if you'll go along with what the test's telling you as opposed to what's clearly in front of you. So I'm just going to put something along the lines of, yes, you can count on age. And then I'm going to reference the check that I performed. Performed a count if check on age and found 44 appeared 3 times. Now, if you've missed something by putting this sentence and saying what you did, you've told the examiner exactly how you've worked this out, how you've come to this conclusion. So if there is a knowledge gap that they need to fill for you, then they obviously know how to progress you in the future if you get the role. And if you are correct, then perfect, well done, you've correctly challenged something that's incorrect and shown that you're capable of independent thought and remaining your integrity. Why do we put false statements in competency-based interviews? Well, there's a variety of reasons why, but it's mainly, for me personally, I mainly use them to see if a candidate will keep their integrity, and 2, to see the kind of answer that I will get. Some people will just not answer the question. Some people will just simply put, yes, you can. Well, how do you know you can? If I'm saying you can't, and you're saying you can, I need an explanation why. And the reason that that's important is because often in business roles, data roles, finance roles and that, what will happen is there'll be a question where, as opposed to just saying yes or no, you'll need to do a bit more digging, you'll need to answer why. So I want to see how hungry people are to actually investigate things before presenting them as facts. This is just a bit of additional context there for you. Question 5. We like to band our customers into over 40 and below 40. How much did the over 40s spend with us this year? So I don't recall seeing customer banding. No, there's not. It's just simply ages. So we're going to have to create the customer banding. So that's going to be fairly easy to do. So if they're a customer purchasing from a clothing store, they're probably over the age of 16, but we will just start at 1 anyway to cover all bases. So all I'm doing here is creating the over 40s and the under 40s groups. So I'm just going to drag down here all of this to get all the ages. We'll go to about age 100 just to be safe. Perfect. And then next to ages that are over 40, I'm going to put over 40. And we're just going to drag this up till we get to 40 and Control D, and then we're going to put under 40. It's nice when there's only 2 age bands. I've had to do this before where there's those typical 5 age bands, which takes a little bit longer. And then we're going to add a new column here called age band equals VLOOKUP. Now obviously if you've only got 10 ages here, it might be quicker to do this manually. However, when people normally ask you for age bands, normally there's a few hundred rows at least, which makes it more efficient to ultimately use a VLOOKUP, show off your Excel skills, as opposed to going through and trying to do all of that manually, because that would take too much time, particularly when you're on a time limit of the 30 minutes. So just to talk you through what I've done here and my formula, I've told Excel to look up B2, which is the age, in the area where I've put all of the ages in column J and over 40 and under 40 in column K. And then I've told it to bring back column index 2, which in our case is going to be column K, because even though column K is the 11th column on the spreadsheet, in the range that it's looking at within the same spreadsheet is only column 2. So I'm going to click enter, and there you can see the first one's over 40. I've just noticed though it hasn't frozen the cells, so we're just going to do our FN F4 if you're on Excel Online like me, or simply F4 if you're on Excel desktop. And then we're just going to double click and let that formula go down, check that it's done all of the values, and then just to be sure, particularly if you've got a lot of data, I like to spot check a couple. So under 40, yes, the person's 22. Over 40, yes, the person's 65. Okay, I'm happy with that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert a pivot table. Again, and this time what I'm after is I'm after the age band in rows, the over 40 or under 40, and the order value. Now at this point I've forgotten the question. I just knew that I needed order values for over 40s and under 40s, which you often do. But just go back to the answer tab and you'll see question 5 here. We like to band our customers into over 40 and below 40. How much did the over 40 spend with us this year? Perfect, I know that now. So over 40 spent £1,771.41. Again, let's round that to £1,771 in order to match the instructions. So £1,171. Put it into currency, and I'm just going to double check that was £1,171, because as you know, when you have a lot of numbers going on, it can be easily confusing. £1,771. See, this is why we check. Perfect. And finally, that takes us on to question 6. Please paste a pivot table below displaying sales quantity and value by item category. Now this sounds a bit familiar because earlier we created a pivot table to find out how much the value of the dress was. And this again is another example of why leaving working out is great, because you sometimes find that work that you've done for a previous question you can actually recycle and use for a later question, which is going to be the case here, because if you remember correctly, our pivot table that we used to find out dress sales, we put in order value and the category of the item, like dresses, and now it wants a pivot table displaying sales value and quantity by item category. Well, we already have half of that. So as you can see here, we've already got category and order sales value. So we just need to pull the quantity into values. Again, make sure it's a sum. And then what we'll do is, before copying this across, we'll just tidy it up a little bit. So for example, putting the pounds into currencies. And then what we'll do is copy it across into your answers, paste the pivot table there, and the sheet's there as well in case they want to look at how you created your pivot table. Just expand all the columns so that we've got full values, and then double check that the pivot table fits all the requirements. please paste a pivot table below displaying sales value and quantity by item category, which I think it's safe to say that we have done. So we've answered all the questions, so the first thing I do is go back to the instructions to check I've completed them all. Please answer all questions in the Answers tab. Yes, we've done that. We've got 30 minutes to complete these questions, or if we go by the time on the video, we still have 10 minutes left, so we can perform some checks. If at this point I had run out of time, I would just go with what I had left. However, it's important as you're going through the questions, you're conscious of the time. So, for example, if you're at the 20-minute mark now and you'd only completed question 2, what I'd advise you do is look at the remaining 4 questions and think, are there any quick wins here that I can do quickly in order to get more questions done in this time? And remember to breathe and go at your own pace as much as possible. If you were unsure on all of the questions and you were running tight on time, then just go through in methodical order and provide as much working out as you can would be my advice. That's just the information on what the tabs contain. We know that by now, so don't need to listen to that. Please answer in whole numbers only. So again, I will go back here and just check we've answered in whole numbers only. Here we've answered the currency and we've answered to a couple of decimal places. So what I'll do is I'll just take those off just because it says answer in whole numbers only. So it's safe to assume that that means currency as well. And then finally, please display working out what you feel is required. Please make sure answers are provided after questions within the Answers tab. So, yep, answers are all in the correct places. And obviously we've got 2 sheets here that we've done. Now you may have noticed the pivot sheet hasn't been mentioned, and we haven't actually looked at the pivot sheet at all, and it's not been mentioned in the instructions. Sometimes you will get additional tabs that you're not meant to touch, they're just there. They can be put there for a variety of reasons. I've included for more senior roles several fake tabs before, purely because I want to know, are they going to interact with the data and make an error thinking that they should interact with it and they're overthinking things? Are they going to leave it there? Are they going to use it to try and find answers? There's many reasons why tabs that you don't actually need to use may be included, but being as it's not been mentioned in the instructions, I would just leave it completely alone. And then finally, the other thing I'll do is just read through the questions again, just to check that no tricky wording's been used and I haven't misread anything. So question 1, how many orders are there that have a quantity of 5? I've put 17. Well, why did I put 17? Oh yeah, I put 17 because I went to the data tab. I looked at all of the orders and I did a count if, and then I'll normally just typically click there as well, just to check my formula and to check that I haven't had a slip of the finger or something. Question 2, what's the order value for customer phone number 1234566791? Again, just check that, check the formula, check that I've used the right number. And these may be quite simple checks, but I'd always encourage you to do them if you do have the time, because no matter how much of an advanced user you are, like even myself, if somebody puts me in an Excel test tomorrow, I always second guess myself, I always question myself, and you always get in your head a little bit that it can be quite easy to count the number 4 instead of the number 5 to VLOOK up to the wrong cell. Then answer, how much is the value of dress sales this year? Well, actually, we can just check that in our little pivot table, really. £659. Why can you not count on age? Again, that was the check that I performed. We can go back and we can check that we still agree with it. And for questions like that one that could use a bit more investigating, like the count on age, it might be worth pursuing this further, because if we were doing this test, we'd still have 5 minutes left. So it might be at the point where we think, well, I've done that test, should I pursue it further? Is there another check that we can do? Oh, I know what we could do. We could put this in a pivot table and we could see how many there are of 44 to check that it has actually counted it correctly. Oh yeah, look, there is 3, it has counted it correctly. And then by doing that other check, you can then obviously put in here, not only has it appeared 3 times, but see pivot sheet as it counts age clearly. And then that's more evidence and you're showing the examiner more skills. Question 5, we like to band our customers together into over 40 and below 40. How much did the over 40 spend with us this year? 1,771. So again, go back, check your pivot table, check obviously that you haven't got any values in the blanks. Go through again, just sense check both your VLOOKUP, the over 40, the under 40, check another couple of numbers again if you like and if you've got time. Then answer, finally paste in the pivot table, check that that's there, that's what you've got and everything, and you've done it as a live pivot table from the sheet that you used. You can find your sheet. And finally, after that, if you're all happy with everything and the time's done, send it over to the examiner if it's virtual. If the examiner's in the room, state that you're done. Or if you're doing this on a computer and the examiner's left the room and it's not in Excel, it's on Excel desktop, save your work. Make sure you save your work, your initials or something attached to it, so it's clear that it is your work. And then just wait there for the examiner to return. I hope you found that helpful. If you would like more content similar to this or variations of this or different examples, do let me know in the comments down below and I'll try and help and advise yourselves as much as I can do. Thank you very much for watching, and please feel free to go and have a look at my other videos on not just interview questions but also on how to do the formulas themselves if you're a bit unsure on that.